Hello and welcome to the Unusual Stories podcast. My name is Wojciech Salski, I'll be your host for today, and before we begin, may I just remind you, if you find this podcast interesting, entertaining, useful, or any other way that is of value, then please do click the subscribe button or a follow button, depending on your platform of choice, and share it with a friend, spread the word. It goes a long way, it helps the podcast grow, it gives me a chance to reach more curious and, insight-seeking people like yourself, and all in all, it's just a great way of spreading the word around and basically empowering the podcast to be better. And if you'd like to support me in any other way, then please follow the link below. There is an option to send me an email. Maybe you would like to suggest a book that I should review and talk about this year that we're just starting. And if you'd like to support the podcast financially, some of you are donating to my cause, which is amazing. It definitely helps as well. This is a full-time passion for now. It definitely will become a full-time job going forward. And so as the show grows, it's because of you and people like yourself that I'm able to contribute more and to spend more time doing what I love. And thank you so much if you already did, and thank you so much for listening. Quite frankly, it's sometimes quite peculiar to think that I've been chatting to my computer for such a while now, and oftentimes I don't really hear what people have to say. Some people comment, some people let me know later on, but it definitely feels reassuring every now and then to get some reply. And so thank you for that, and thank you for your support. Now, this week I have something very, very different for you, and this is I'm really excited about this book and about this topic, quite frankly, because it makes sense for me, and in a way it satisfies my inner child and my fascination about the cosmos and my disbelief in the idea that we are the only species out there and we truly are just, this little marble in a vastness of the universe and no one else is there. I never truly believed that. I felt that, I felt it's quite arrogant as an idea. And I felt like it made sense to me that, the world is so vast that we just simply cannot see far enough. But maybe in the future, our, maybe my children or my children's children or whoever will be able to explore the cosmos and understand more and maybe encounter a different species of intelligent beings, basically, and that don't come out from this planet in and of itself. And so here we are. I mean, I don't know if you've heard about this. If you haven't, I'm not surprised. I've recently just heard about it, first initially by listening to one of the interviews on Joe Rogan's podcast with a film director called James Fox, I believe, the author of The Program, a movie that I link the IMDb sort of link below for you to look up and to watch for yourself. But and then I listened to the interview with the author of this book that I'm gonna review today for you, Luis Elizondo. The book itself is called Imminent, and basically it's a sort of a memoir, maybe, of a special agent, Luis Elizondo, and his experience on working as a part of a Q-tip or sort of wing of CIA, if you will, a secret agency dedicated to researching and sort of observing, exploring unidentified anomalous phenomena, which is the official word, that the official anagram that nowadays is used to consider UFOs, right? So UFO, it used to be the unidentified flying object. Now, because since the times that UFO was first coined, many other observable phenomenon were discovered. Not all of them were flying, and not all of them were objects. This new sort of definition, maybe a name, if you will, was given to these phenomena, which is the unidentified anomalous phenomenon, which, you know, just allows for maybe a wider scope of things to fold, phenomena to fold into this sort of category. Now, the big elephant in the room here for you, and of course, you know, feel free. I would encourage you to read the book, and I would encourage you to listen to the episode. I'll actually put here the link to the interview. To watch the movie called The Program, to familiarize yourself with those ideas. But the point I'm gonna make straight away, that I'm convinced about at this point, after watching both documentary, a few interviews, and reading the book, is that aliens are real. Whatever you consider to be an alien in a sense of a species, a form of intelligent beings, or not beings, but things. This is always where the language gets in the way, I guess. They're real, and we don't know whether they are from outer space or maybe from under the ocean, because let us remember that over 90% of the ocean floor is not actually explored. So who is it to say that there isn't a whole civilization maybe living, below us? And if you consider the ideas of physics, such as coined in movies like blockbusters like Interstellar or Inception, who is it to say that we might have not discovered yet these forms, these beings, simply because they are maybe in an alternative, a different dimension, living side by side with us? We don't know. This is not going to be the focus of the episode. Quite frankly, as I was thinking about this, because I can feel the energy within me to share it with you and be as excited as I was and as my father was when we discussed it yesterday. Funnily enough, I suggested for him to read the book, and he read the book in no time, I think few days. And I called him yesterday just to have a chat. And then it turns out he finished the book almost at the same time as I did. And so we had a conversation. And for him also, being an avid cosmos fanatic, an enthusiast, he felt really moved by findings. And it was really wonderful to share this, experience with him. But I was thinking, how is this relevant to us, right? The majority of episodes on this podcast are dedicated to self-improvement, are dedicated to discovering the better ways of dealing with the world. Maybe sometimes I also delve into topics that might help us deeply or deeper understand the workings of the world, so we can sort of realign more. Now this one, I still did find some qualities in this, in these findings that I will share with you that are relevant to these concepts. But most importantly, I think, because it's such a groundbreaking, in my opinion, discovery, and it's also not yet as public as it should be, I would argue, especially that Lewis's efforts really took place, started off in 2017. So it has been almost 8 years now since the initial movement began to uncover these secrets and to basically shed a light of both the public and the government on these ideas. Now, in 2022, the true, and 2022 and 2023, true groundbreaking events took place. So without jumping the gun and without really sharing too much, I'm just going to point out that in 2022, according to the author, the first official legislation was introduced in the United States, allowing the UAP topic to be discussed on the congressional floor. And most importantly, a whistleblower act was, sort of Immunity Act was enacted, which allowed for the whistleblowers to come forth and basically not have to adhere to the stringent NDAs they've signed those years before. And so many of soldiers that either flew in the military or were a part of the Navy that had a chance to encounter these UAPs suddenly were able to speak. Now in 2022 there was the congressional hearing, which is available online, and I will put below the link, as the author encourages every one of us, especially in the United States, but I think it's a global topic really, to listen to it for ourselves. And in 2022, also signed by President Biden, came in the 20-page document regarding UAP. And I will also put a link below to that particular website with the document, mostly for your own benefit of exploring it further. Because I know how easy at this point, and we will discuss why, how easy it is to discredit these ideas straight away and sort of call me a cook for sharing them with you, and then move on with your life as if nothing happened. It is no surprise that it's so easy, since all the way back since 1960s and 70s, many secret agencies that were in place for these particular phenomena made a conscious effort of basically shunning and sort of calling crazy and discrediting anyone who would even suggest that UFOs are real, right? That aliens are real. And in many ways, it's a rolling joke. I remember as a kid that, oh, UFOs are real. It was almost like a joke, and for a good reason. I mean, a truth, how's the saying goes, a lie that is repeated 1,000 times becomes the truth, right? This is basically the problem of the majority of bad ideas and bad actors in the world. But here we are. So let me just say it again. Aliens are real. Whatever they are, we don't know, but they are definitely there. And Luis Elizondo, with his book Imminent, is only one of many that is giving his own testimony to prove that is true. Now, let's start with this topic maybe. Since I already said that since 1960s, 70s, the USA's government, although it's mostly governmental agencies, not elected officials, which is very crucial here, have been hiding this from the public and actively discrediting. This all sort of took place first during the loud case of the Roswell crash. So if you've ever heard about Area 51, that's basically around that space where supposedly a crashed UFO was discovered, and at the time in the newspapers for many weeks and then months and years to follow, a huge campaign by the governmental agencies was enacted to basically discredit this idea as any truth, and they even showed some proof of some plastic debris and everything, basically making it into a nothing, even though it wasn't nothing after all. And here we are, almost 50 years later, over 50 years later. The one thing that really stood out to me in the book, because I would straight away say, read the book, I can only say so much here in terms of how much I actually understand this topic, but it's definitely something to explore for yourself. The one thing that really struck me the most is related to President Eisenhower's goodbye speech, farewell speech, where he basically warned the people of United States and the world of the dangers looming behind the increasing military-industrial complex. And this is basically a big word for all things related to military in terms of private companies and contractors, and their impact on the foreign affairs and on politics. And the one thing that really struck me in the book as something so outrageous that, almost absurd, and I think we see this, especially you guys that are listening from United States, might have already observed it in your country in particular, although I don't think it's only your country that is suffering from this, is the increasing creep of non-elected officials, governmental and non-governmental sort of agencies that are slowly but surely overreaching and basically become decision makers among the ideas that should be discussed and decided by elected officials, right? The whole point of democracy, when it works, is to give the power to the people so they elect their responsible representatives, and these representatives represent people in making decisions. Now, this is not the case with UFO and UAP phenomenon topics. So Luis Elizondo points in his book that actually many of those agencies, including the one he worked for over 20 years, actually do not consider incoming governmental officials as someone worth informing about their activity, mostly because they perceive them as if they are there temporarily, and for good reason. I mean, it's a malicious approach, but the reason is quite straightforward. If a president is chosen for 4 years, and if his cabinet is chosen for 4 years, then from a standpoint of a non-elected official who might be working for the same agency for the next 50 years, that person elected for 4 years seems almost like a temp, like an intern rather than someone that should be informed on everything all the time. And of course, the problem with this proposition is that they are ultimately the ones who should be informed, because they are the ones that are able to make decisions informed by what the public would like the decision makers to do. But of course, from the standpoint of agencies and the creeping power that comes with it, and obviously some private contractors and beneficiaries of these secrets, it is not an obvious choice. It's almost the opposite to what we would like to see as citizens of a country. I would like to believe, and I would like to see, that my representatives that I vote for can tell me of everything that is happening within my government, simply because I would like to be able to impact through my voting the way my government works. Now, this becomes basically impossible if even the governmental officials that you've chosen do not know what the non-governmental agencies and governmental agencies of non-elected officials are up to. And this is basically what has been going on for the past 50 years in this topic. Now, basically, Lewis goes through the process of explaining first what his work entailed, as much as he could explain without, overstepping his NDAs, which are still somewhat in place. And then he explained his situation when he first realized that basically what they've discovered and have been discovering cannot be officially, according to their policies, shown to anyone in the elected governmental office. And this disturbed him greatly. He felt like these are, topics and phenomena that should be available to people like, like you and me, and also, most importantly, to people such as the president and the Secretary of State and whatnot. And so, after long deliberation, he decided to risk it all. And basically, a part of the book explains how he dismissed himself from the job and took to first to the streets, then to sort of entertainment industry maybe, and then to newspapers and news outlets and podcasts, and wrote a book to highlight these issues. And he believed that by going to the news, he will make the Congress and the president aware of the topic to the point when they will have to start asking questions. And since the NDAs in place for the majority of people involved with this topic were tying their hands in a sort of in a metaphoric sense, and they were not able to say anything from themselves without being asked by the right people and giving the right permission to do so. It seemed to him like a gamble, the only gamble he could make, and he did really take the gamble, and here we are. So I would say it paid off, looking at it in hindsight. But since it has been over 5 years from that time, one should appreciate and see just how much this man has risked. And this part of the book basically explores the process, the arduous process of overcoming hurdles and basically becoming a victim of governmental pressure and overreach and obstacle course of bureaucracy that was trying to stop him in his tracks. Now, one interesting thing that he points out at that point of the book, although related to an earlier part, is the playbook that he outlines as the playbook scripted at the time of the Roswell crash by the governmental agencies, the secret governmental agencies, which would play out again and again. And I wouldn't be surprised if, as I read out these points, you see a resemblance of such activities in terms of other policies and topics that might be considered kooky or controversial or not unpopular in the popular opinion, if there is one. Simply because they don't fit the agenda of the government or some private actors or both, or shadow government or whatever you want to put there. So the points that Luis Elizondo outlines as the playbook for basically keeping secrets, or maybe dismissing any sort of explored secrets by the government from the public, go as follows. First, admit nothing and deny everything. Second, make counter-accusations. Third, retrieve the pieces of the crashed craft. So this is in particular to the Roswell case. 4, whisk the items to an undisclosed location so no one can find them. 5th, work in secret to reverse engineer it. And of course, this is a major point to make. One of the biggest arguments of all those agencies wanting to keep secrets from others in this particular topic is that it's a national secret, it's a national security secret, and so we should not be talking about this because we want to be stronger than our opponents, whatever you consider to be an opponent of a country. And so this is why we kept you out, because a secret shared might not be a secret for long. Obviously, the faultiness of this approach is that ultimately one would argue that an elected official, such as the president, should not be kept out of any secrets, because that's the person you've chosen to bear the responsibility for these secrets. But, we've already stated that the agencies don't necessarily agree with this approach. Now, 6th point, intimidate witnesses into saying nothing, discredit those that say, make them look crazy, and stigmatize the topic. And this is basically, I would say, 101 playbook for what happened during COVID. Anyone who would say that there is something wrong with the political agenda or approach of the government would be considered a crazy person, a vaccine denier or whatever. And this is where, for me, it feels very, very fresh, because obviously I had a chance to experience it, being an aware adult human being. So here I'm definitely seeing connections. And then the 7th point is accuse anyone who raises voice with espionage act, which basically means that whoever would come forth and say something about Roswell or any other of the cases that the book explores, the agencies would basically raise hell to make sure that that person is charged with, being considered a spy or whatever, a terrorist maybe, and they could basically bury them with their secrets. In other words, Luis Elizondo writes, deny, deny, deny. Now this is, almost surreal in a sense that it's true. I mean, isn't it crazy that the more we truly seek the truth, the more we sort of unwind the many lies and secrets that are there, that are hidden. It's like when you gaze into the abyss long enough, you start seeing more and more of the abyss. And for me, we keep coming back to it, right? They say ignorance is bliss. And I think, in a way, ignorance is bliss. And I've actually made an episode about it. I might link it below. Let me just write it down for you. They say ignorance is bliss, and I think that it basically comes down to the idea that the less you think about things, the less you know about things, the less reasons you have to be worried about things. Because if you are wise, and if you are at least seeking to know more, maybe not if you are wise, if you want to be wise, and if you are seeking to know more, you are likely to get burned by realizing just how much you don't know, plus how many of the things you think you knew are actually the opposite or worse, whatever that means to you. So I've observed it in myself that the acceleration, especially over the past 2 years, I think, it's like a compound effect about which we've discussed recently. In a way, the more books I read and the more topics I explore and the more they intertwine, the more intertwining I see and the more reasons to explore them further I find, and more often than not, the more reasons to disbelieve my initial assumptions I have. It's almost like with every book that I read, I find a few things that I now know, and I find a dozen or more things that I have no clue about that I didn't realize. Or maybe worse, I find things that I did not know in that way, and I had some wrong assumptions about these things. And of course, I'm saying worse, meaning it actually means I will have to do more work, and I probably have to, in a way, take away some of my foundations of the knowledge to yet again build them from scratch. But I see it as a net benefit, right? This is my pursuit of knowledge, pursuit of wisdom, pursuit of truth, and in many ways it's very, very encouraging. At the same time, it does take effort, and it's definitely not the most pleasant. It sometimes I truly feel like the world is really complex and really, really scary. But you know, this is not to say you should not seek. Seek and you shall find, right? The Bible tells us, and I think that is very true. Ultimately, if your goal is to feel completely at ease, then you probably are better off not asking any questions outside the ordinary. But I bet that kind of approach is quite boring and probably unfulfilling. The alternative to it is you will have to face the music. When you ask the right question and the answer follows, just be ready, because, you know, if you wished for it, then you will have to deal with whatever you found. Now, before I go to the final big topic that I would say is very relevant to our podcast and to my understanding of the world, I just wanted to share with you this interesting metaphor that Luis Elizondo portrays in his book. Basically, apparently there were thousands of sightings around the world of these UAPs, and some of them date as far back as 5,000 years ago, since we have drawings in Aboriginal caves in Australia, for example, of UFO-like looking creatures. And funnily enough, those alien creatures, the way they are portrayed 5,000 years ago, is very similar to how other people portrayed them throughout the ages. So there must be something there, although, you know, we don't know. And a big question that was asked in the book by the author is, well, why do they come, right? What is their point of being around Earth and sort of observing us? And something that was noted was that many sightings are related to military zones and zones with nuclear arsenal or, you know, nuclear plants, which, you know, these are one of the most powerful in terms of a load that could explode and basically destroy the Earth places on the Earth. And the question remains, why do they visit and somewhat observe us maybe? And an idea that speaks to me that I really wanted to share with you here and with myself or my kids into the future when I listen to this episode back, is this metaphor of a gorilla in a zoo or in a cage. Now, I'll translate it to my metaphor of that metaphor, but I'll try to keep it, remain the same point. The idea being, I was talking with my father about it yesterday. If we consider ourselves to be that gorilla or an ant, better yet, an ant. If we consider the UFO, UAP aliens to be the sheriff or, you know, the security guard or a human being in comparison to that gorilla. Now, let's say that you encounter an ant on the street, right? Maybe you decide you would like to have this ant in a container of a sort. I don't know. Let's say that you place the ant in an aquarium or like a terrarium thing. You bring it home, you put it there, you create a habitat for it. I'm not saying that the aliens made the habitat, right? This is just for the metaphor of how they may perceive us. And then you observe the ant. As long as you observe the ant and the ant seems to be living a fairly chill life, so it doesn't really bother you, you wouldn't worry about the ant, right? Let's imagine now that suddenly the ant, builds a nuclear reactor inside that aquarium, and has the potential of maybe blowing it up, and therefore, for example, exploding your room. Now suddenly this ant became a nuisance. And so since you are much more advanced and much more powerful than the ant, you might be inclined to take care of the ant, right? Just in case it would click the button in the wrong place and basically blow up your room. In the book, the author basically shares that story as an idea of a gorilla. Like the gorilla in a cage, as long as it's in a cage and it's there and it's safe, might be observed by the security guard, but they don't bother about they're not worried. Well, let's say that the gorilla figures out a way of getting out of the cage, or maybe blowing up the cage. Now suddenly the sheriff or the security guard might come up with no choice other than taking the gorilla out, maybe by basically shooting it down. So in a way, why it stuck with me is it makes a lot of sense from the standpoint of an more advanced technology and more advanced species to observe a lesser advanced one, right? This is exactly what we do. I mean, we study nature in so many ways. We study animals in so many ways. Sometimes we even put animals in cages literally to study them further. Now, why wouldn't we then assume that this could be the same approach another civilization, maybe an intergalactic one, takes with other lesser species, less advanced species, as they travel through the universe and they encounter us? This is just a question, an open question to you. What do you think? How would that make you feel? And most importantly, what do you think we should do about it? Of course, this is not to say that you should take to the streets right now and picket for us to shoot anything that flies into the atmosphere from now on. I think that's that's probably an unlikely to be a good approach to take. But the point is, since we don't know what these UAPs mean, we should at least approach them in the same way that we would be approached by a lesser species. That's my theory, and let's see. Maybe, I hope, I pray that in my lifetime I will see some developments on that front, and I'm quite hopeful we will also come together as a human species in the face of a potential external species to figure out a way to go forth. Who knows? Now, the last point I wanted to talk about is really fun in a way that just for context, my girlfriend's mom is very religious, right? And I do consider myself to be quite a spiritual person as well. Like, for example, I do believe in a higher consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, have a gander. There are plenty of spiritual related books and episodes around. And I was sharing ideas from this book and the movie called The Program by James Fox, that I linked below for you to watch. With her and we were talking with Julia over the phone, and her mom was in the car, so we were talking together, and we sort of explained to Julia's mom what exactly was the movie about. And her mom said something along the lines of like, well, yeah, but I don't believe in aliens. And I said, why not? And she said something in between the lines of, well, because I believe on God, and I I don't believe in aliens, if I believe in God the way Christians do, it's a sort of a contrast. You cannot have both, right? And at that point, it struck me as untrue. And it's not that I mean believing in God is untrue now that we know there are aliens. Rather, my proposition that I put forth, and I think I actually convinced her, which was a very interesting, experience to have, considering, people being quite, some people being quite reluctant to admit to change their perspectives, especially on the religious front. Why would we be so arrogant to assume that if we believe in God, that we are the only species that God created that are, on such a level? Since we know the cosmos is so vast, why wouldn't God create a bunch of different species, sentient species, conscious beings on different parts of the cosmos, maybe, thousands of them, just for the sake of creating them? If they are, God is the ultimate creator, I don't think it would be that much of an ultimate creator if he only reserved the creation to one particular conscious species and a bunch of, subservient kind of animals and plants and fungi to participate in the ecosystem. So my main point here I'm trying to make, and this is something that popped up both in the program by James Fox and in the book by Luis Elizondo, is this reluctance that our nation states as well as our religious institutions might have in accepting and sort of openly talking about aliens as something to contemplate, to respond to, mostly because they don't want to lose control. And as we know, it's all about control in those institutions. If you don't control the way information flows as a Catholic Church, you're likely to lose your faith base to some other subscribe-like community elsewhere. And of course, I don't dismiss any of those religions. I think, I'm definitely a Christian, and in many ways, I think I fit into the Christian group. I believe in God. But the point I'm making here is, why wouldn't we embrace the idea of aliens being around us and explore this as if they are just another species, without this being in any way a hindrance to our notions about the way the universe is and about God and our faith? Wouldn't it be arrogant to consider ourselves to be the only ones out there? It feels to me that this is the case. And I'm happy, for you to have a different opinion. I'm happy for you to send me an email about it or comment below that, this is completely not right and you have a different perspective. That's completely fine. The whole point about faith and the whole fun about faith and religion and things we believe in, and this is the key word, believe rather than know, believe in, is that we can discuss them for the benefit of the both of us engaged in the conversation. And so, this is just a really, really interesting topic that I literally just wrote down here: aliens versus God, as if it's some sort of a, clash of the titans. Whereas I truly do believe that if God is the creator of it all and maybe is sitting outside of our universe, kind of looking in, maybe through a magnifying glass and just checking us out, why wouldn't God create other species and see what happens? I know I would. I mean, I'd like to see a variety of different civilizations pop up and not only one. Especially if if you would assume that we wouldn't go about our development the way we did, then maybe it would be just boring to watch. Who is it to say that God doesn't enjoy observing its, creations, engaging in their creation of the world themselves? I don't know. It sounds like something God would be inclined to do. That's all I'm saying. Now, my invitation for this week is quite a lengthy one, and the point, actually, I think my invitation is an extension of the invitation Luis Elizondo mentions at the very end of the book, which is basically the idea, the invitation to start caring about this topic. And especially if you are in the United States, which I know a majority of you, my dear listeners, are, Luis Elizondo encourages you in particular to start having conversations with your friends and family about these issues, about this topic, and to write to your local representatives in the government to raise these issues on the congressional and sort of Senate floor going forward, because he perceives this topic to be an imminent whatever. So you can include here the imminent threat or imminent opportunity or imminent whatever. And the narration and sort of the vibe from the book doesn't strike me as negative or sort of eerie. Quite frankly, it's quite optimistic in a way that in the same manner, both the program, the documentary that came out last year, and this book, Imminent, seem to point to this as the start of a discussion. So it's sort of like we're just threading, kind of dipping our toes in this vast ocean of possibilities and information regarding this topic. The mere fact that you probably have not heard about this yet means that this topic is barely just being touched, considering that the hearings in Congress that I'll link below have been happened in 2022, and only right now I discover it. And of course, fair enough, I don't watch American television, and I don't watch American Congress participating in hearings. Quite frankly, I wasn't even that involved interested and involved with politics up until last year, when I sort of observed some happenings and started to really track what's going on in the world in that regard. I became more aware, I guess. This means that you're likely to face this for the first time. Maybe you're still quite skeptical about the topic. And so I would urge you, and this is my invitation for you this week, do at least one thing to explore this further. Whether it's purchasing the book on Amazon or on Audible, and that's where I listened to it. Whether it's listening to the interview that I'll link below with the director of the program, whether it's watching the program documentary. I watched it with my girlfriend a few days ago, and it was really, really interesting and entertaining and also powerful, so fascinating, and she loved it too. So I definitely recommend. Maybe it's an idea for a date. Basically do something about it. And I don't mean this in a way that you will now decide of the impact this will have on the world, but we all know about the ripple effect, and knowledge is something that it can be shared to multiply. It's one of those beautiful things that, we don't lose when we share it with another. And ultimately, if we do believe that democracy and the system of governance will work, we should be first and foremost acting as citizens to move, to thread the needle in the right direction. And for the benefit of my children and yours, when and if they come, I would like to encourage you to explore this topic further. And even if it is to explore it for yourself, so you have a fun fact to share with people at a party and then be dismissed as a crazy person, only for them to realize a few years later that you were right. I mean, whatever you want to think about that, I find it quite funny, and I enjoy having these conversations, and I like to explore topics that I've not had a chance to explore before, which is, I guess, why we are here and why we're doing this this podcast. So, yeah, as I said again, aliens are real, guys, and if you'd like to know more, check out the links below for those different sources. And I hope that this is something of a start for your extraterrestrial exploration adventure, as it was for me. Other than that, as per usual, please, may I just remind you, click the subscribe button below, follow the episodes, share it with a friend. If this was something interesting, send them a link to this. And if you'd like to support the podcast in any other way, find the link below for it. I will be greatly appreciating of that. And other than that, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here to hear this craziness. Yeah, and as per usual, have a wonderful, wonderful week. Stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.